Hello, and welcome into Classic Wax, your favorite new morning show, brought to you by the Beat Sessions. I am your host, Mitchell Weary. Thank you for tuning in. Sorry about yesterday. I will just admit right off the bat that I slept through my alarm. I failed to wake up in time to get the show notes and everything that I needed to get together to do this today. The new job is fantastic, but there's just some adjustments with my new hours, my new schedule. So I apologize for that. I will be better about being more consistent for you guys on Monday, but very excited for the lineup of things to talk about today, especially this album from Talk Talk, Laughingstock. If you're not familiar with it, a post-rock classic. It's a fascinating record, especially you consider the time period that it dropped and what was going on, around that musically, and the influence that it continued to have throughout the decades that followed. And so very excited to talk about that record. And lots of other good stuff to talk about as well. We had some excellent records drop this week, and dipped back and talked about a record from last week as well. That's and well worth it too. Excited to talk about that, touch on that a little bit. And then we got some fun news stories that we can get into. It was kind of a wild weekend. We are avoiding Diddy, by the way. I don't want to talk about that crap. I think we all know what's about to go down, and rightfully so. Freaking douchebag. But we got some funny news stories. Not funny. Well, one of them's kind of funny. The other one's if you've known me for a while, you know that there's no love lost as far as this story. So before we jump into that, I just want to say please like, share, subscribe, do all the things to help me blow up this channel in 2024. Thank you for tuning in to album reviews, to the live show. Definitely appreciate all of your support. And if you feel so inclined to drop a super chat or two, that would be great. I would love to interact with you guys and answer some questions, or give you some thoughts or comments, or even have a little exchange in the chat with any of you if you'd like to do so. So don't be shy, jump right in, and we're gonna jump right into this thing, leading off with 2024 and the death of the festival. That hippie chick is probably very sad. It's pretty wild to see the way that this string of music festivals is just kind of going down. They're all smaller ones, but there's a number of them internationally. Lollapalooza, Paris, being a major one that there's a number of reasons that are driving this, and I've never really been a big fan of festivals in the first place to begin with. I think it's just too much oftentimes, and I think that the more success that you saw with a festival like Coachella, you saw it open up. You saw it not be as focused necessarily as an event should be. I just feel like it became this sprawling, chaotic thing for multiple weekends when it started off being like just a 2-day thing. Covering such a vast array of genres, and to a degree it's cool, right? It's you think about, and this is the positive thing that I wanted to bring up about festivals, as far as just a generational, accessibility to music. And if you wanted to really take advantage of a place where you could go and touch on so many things that you've never heard before, festivals were great. And as Coachella opened up, I think that's one of the things that made it so cool, is you had such a diverse array of musicians, of bands, that this is before you had these streaming platforms that are just behemoths, and the algorithms that cater to your taste. And so, like most things back in the day, there was more of a process, and I think that that's what was so compelling about festivals for people. Not really my thing, but I totally get it. You get down for like 2 or 3 days, you go to a place that, hopefully is pretty. And that's the thing about Coachella. It's like, I've never been a big fan of that part of California. To each their own. I don't think it's that pretty. But the idea is that you go someplace, you escape, and then you have exposure to all this music, all this art that you didn't before. But that's not the case now, and especially coming off of COVID, you have a generation of younger people. It's funny to read about. They don't party as much. They're not into promiscuous sex, and they're admittedly more lonely. This is an isolated generation, and if you think about the last 5 years, it completely makes sense why this generation of people behaves the way that they do. Festivals aren't their thing. It's not. I think there's the big antisocial element to it, right? I think this is a generation of people, of young people, that isn't interested in being around each other. And I think there might even be like residual paranoia coming off of the COVID experience. But talk about the algorithm, and you talk about the ability of streaming services to cater to listeners, to feed new music based on what the listeners already played and what they like. What they frequently are throwing on more often, I should say. And so there's all these mechanisms at work now that really are ostensibly are doing the same thing that the music festival is doing, but now you're just not, you're not getting gouged too. I feel like I love talking about this with people, and I remember my parents kind of scolded me when I was younger about not being more responsible with my money. I dropped a lot of money as a teenager on music, especially live music. And I don't regret it at all in hindsight now, especially when I look at the cost of, the cost to go to a show was outrageous. I mean, just the average band that you might want to check out in a larger venue. I mean, you're looking at spending close to $1,000 usually if you want to go to a show. Oftentimes it involves traveling someplace, you got the tickets, you're going to have a beverage or two, or, at least go out to eat. You're going to do something. Like, the whole objective of going to this event is to go out and to have a good time and to be social. But it's gotten to a point where, things are egregiously overpriced, including the concert tickets. And I don't blame people for backing out, and you see it. And I think the other thing too, and this is truly where I've never been a fan of festivals, because I just think that, despite the ability to explore so much music, if I'm going to go check out live music, I'd rather have an intimate, focused experience from a band that I like. And when you're going to festivals and you're seeing bands that you like, even, you're maybe getting an hour from them at most, like maybe a little more from headliners, and depending on the festival, maybe you'll get a full set of music. Who even knows? But I just feel like that in experiencing bands in that live moment, you're not really getting what their show is truly about. There's, on so many levels, compromises from the artist as far as what is going down in those venues. And so it's, there's no love lost as far as the death of the music festival. And I think that in a lot of ways you're seeing something that it honestly surprises me that it's taken 25 years for this to be a thing. And when you consider the failure of Woodstock 99, like, I'm really surprised that people were brave enough to even try it again, right? I mean, it's like, entertainment is something that it's an avenue, it's a venue where, I mean, you have to sell out to make money. I mean, like, if you want to, as a venue, like, if you want to even break even, I think you have to usually hit like 70-75% in ticket sales. It's very difficult to do. There's a lot of overhead. It's like a restaurant. It's very stressful and very risky. And you're seeing those costs explode with insurance and just everything else that has inflated costs. And people don't want to do it. The other thing I want to bring up too, because I've working in local venues in Tucson, I've seen it. I see it a lot, and I see cheap ass people that come into the venues, they watch live shows, and they don't support the local businesses that put on that music for them. They sit there and they drink water like a bunch of assholes, and they don't tip their servers, and it's frustrating. Like, to you people, if you're watching, if you're one of those people, support the venues that provide you with live music. At least buy a soda. I don't care if you drink or not. Buy a Coca-Cola, leave your server a $5 tip while you enjoy music for an hour. That's going to run you $8. That's like going back to freaking 1966 and being able to go to just about any rock and roll concert, because that's how much they cost back then. And I wish I'd maybe even been alive back then for that experience, because conversations over the years, it's amazing talking to people, and just hearing about that time and place when there wasn't the exploitation and the consumer wasn't being gouged and taken advantage of so much. I don't regret spending that money as a teenager on all the shows that I got to go to. I feel like I avoided all this chaos and got to see a ton of great bands while they were still in their prime even too. And it's I definitely sadly don't go to as many shows as I used to. I'd like to, I'd like to incorporate that into this channel and make that a part of it. But certainly right now with my obligations and with everything, it's not going to happen in the foreseeable future, unfortunately. It's up to you how you want to enjoy your music, who you want to support, but versus festivals where there's just so much corporate involvement, it's I would encourage all of you to if there's a band that you really like, avoid them at a festival. Try to find a local venue, even if you have to drive a little bit. Like I'd say that's well worth it. For example, driving up to Phoenix from Tucson, hour and a half. I got plenty of friends up there, plenty of people that would let me sleep on a couch after a show. That's the kind of stuff that I just think that's more genuine, and there's just more fun in life in adventures like that. Just a personal opinion. Speaking of Lollapalooza festivals, let's talk about these two. Oh man, this is going to be a quick news story, and most of you have probably read already. It is unfortunate that Perry Farrell, whatever his issue might be, if he is suffering from mental health issues, I really hope that he does get the help that he needs. That's a big thing on the channel. We always support that. Don't be shy about that. Always reach out for help. But it's interesting. You read about the band dynamics, these two, the point where, Dave Navarro and Eric Avery, bass player, they were not into the substances. Perry and Lee Harris, however, or not Lee Harris, excuse me. I'm drawing a blank on Jane's Addiction's drummer, but the drummer, excuse me, and Perry Farrell, they were into the substances and certainly created a division. This is a rock and roll outfit that, they went through the thing very fast, and the reunions, when they've happened, have been a mess. This, unfortunately, is not a surprise. I hate to say that, but it just sucks as a fan to have this opportunity. There's probably some younger people, especially, that getting into Jane's Addiction albums in the last 10 years, maybe as a kid or whatever, and you have this opportunity, and now it's blown because the lead singer can't keep his what together on stage. And so it's interesting reading the comments from his wife too, because she talks about his mental health. Like I said, if that's the case, really hope he gets the help that he needs. But then she throws out this excuse about his frustration with not being able to hear his vocals. He's being drowned out by the rest of the band, which, if that's your argument at that point, if that's the angle that's coming up, it feels just kind of like a temper tantrum. And I applaud Dave Navarro for keeping his cool the way that he did on stage. Eric Avery did not. He put Perry in a headlock and hit him a couple of times. It's just a mess, and it's really unfortunate. But I hope that these guys are able to resolve this issue. I'm not going to hold my breath, because this is a pretty big blow up, and I don't see Dave being very amicable about taking the olive branch from Perry on this one anytime soon. It's unfortunate. Those of you who bought tickets, I hope you're able to get a refund, and ultimately I hope you're able to see this show, especially if you've never had a chance to see them. These kind of situations are always unfortunate, and it's take us back to the late 80s when they were in their prime, doing their thing. Good time. Speaking of late 80s, early 90s, we're going to go to the mid 90s. Talk about Not a Surf, this new record. I was like, listen, like, I don't, I don't sit there and like make a big deal about numbers on my videos. I mean, obviously, getting hits on the channel is how you create success and build the thing. But I was shocked that no one was really aware of Not a Surf, into Not a Surf, not wanting to. Maybe someone did another review that I wasn't aware of that was substantially better, and that's totally fine too. But this record, this band is phenomenal. And unfortunately, I think it's overlooked because of I'm just gonna say it. I talked about it in the album review too. Their first album, High Low, the song Popular, it was ubiquitous that year that album came out. And all over the radio, definitely overplayed. And a lot of people that really just, I feel, wrote this band off as a one-hit wonder, and they're not. And they're really arguably one of the most consistent rock and roll outfits that's been around for the last 3 decades. Same 3 guys, Matthew Cause, Daniel Lorca, Ira Elliott. Drawing a blank on their keyboard player right now, but great part of their band as well. Rick Ocasek is the guy that discovered these cats, along with discovering Weezer. So I mean, another cool thing to file in their repertoire, so to speak. But this band, about every 3 years, and the output, I mean, it's prolific, it's consistent, and it's consistently good. Albums like I really think Let Go, 2003's record Let Go, is a classic from these guys. If you're not familiar with their stuff, I'd recommend this. But I Know Who You Are is a great record. I think that this is a band, same 3 guys for 30 years now. They are so consistent in what they do, and not in any way, shape, or form trying to set out and change the world with their music. Be this like big genre bending force, but they every 3 years you can just rely on this outfit stylistically, if it's what you're into, to give you a new collection of songs. And I have always loved that and appreciated that about bands. It's a tough thing to do. It's not easy to be consistent. It's not easy for the same 3 people to stay together for that long, and to work like that, to work on that level. So I applaud Not a Surf, and I definitely would recommend that you guys all check out this record. It is a gem. Bands that kind of did change the landscape have come up this week as well. Talking about this new record, Ensoulment, which is Matt's first album of non-soundtrack music in a quarter century. It's Hufflepuff's getting fired up. What you barking at, buddy? Oh, he's getting all fired up. Buddy, come here and lay down. Come here and lay down. You're fine. But the Matt Johnson's project, 5th album that they've put out now. It's 7th album that they've put out now. This record's phenomenal. There was someone in the comments that was talking about how lyrically it's not so subtle and it's a little bloated, and I definitely understand that. There's a fine line when you walk there. I talk about it on the channel. It's tough to be political. It's tough to drop social commentary into music lyrically. It's approaching topics and being poetic about it. It's easier said than done. And while the music on Ensoulment is phenomenal, and that doesn't surprise me, right? You consider Matt's shift to soundtrack work in the last quarter century, it's pretty much what he's done. I think he started this project back up around like 2017, 2018. But between like early 2000 and that time, it was just, soundtrack music, instrumentation, creating this atmosphere. And this record does that, but unfortunately, the lack of subtlety in the lyrics, I feel like it kind of brings you back down to earth. And I certainly agreed with the person in the comment section on that. But this is a record that, just an incredibly talented musician as far as the post-punk influence, and even like even just a little bit of like a post rock influence as well. This album starts to, there's moments where it loosens up and you really get some free form. You really get some open space, bits of silence. And, like I love that. I love the way that it works, and it's certainly worth your time if you haven't checked it out already. And that brings us to our album of the week. Little classic wax here, talking about Talk Talk and Laughing Stock. This is a phenomenal record released on September 16th, 1991. I know it's the 17th. I know we're supposed to talk about an album that was released on the day. Sorry, I missed you guys, but I really did want to talk about this record. It works out well, too, because it's actually my niece's birthday. Happy birthday, Liv. But this record from Talk Talk would be their final. Mark Hollis, talking about silence, space. This is a guy that, as this band's career progressed through the 80s, a major shift in what their work was doing and what he was trying to bring to the table. This is a band that, they started off in 1982 with their first record, The Party's Over, and that features the hit Talk Talk. You think about the hits like It's My Life. This is a band, heavy electronic influence in the beginning of their career, but as the 80s progressed and as Mark Hollis, progressed as an artist, this is a band that made a major shift towards post-rock. And by the end, you have something that's completely different than what you got at the beginning. Bassist Paul Webb leaves the group after Spirit of Eden, the previous album that came out in 88. I imagine creative differences there. And for the most part, you have drummer Lee Harris that's working on this record, but it's pretty much just Mark Hollis and Tim Freese-Green working on songwriting, Tim working on production on the record. And you get an album that, it's a very interesting progression. I feel like this style of music, post-rock is really attributed to this time and place when this record came out, and Talk Talk is considered one of the fine purveyors, one of the original purveyors of it. But I take it all the way back to, I'd say the Velvet Underground. That's post-rock, in my opinion. I even think an album like Low by David Bowie is certainly, you could classify it as post-rock if you wanted to. And this is a band in 1991. What's going on in music? You have grunge. The release of Pearl Jam 10. You have Nirvana, Nevermind. It's not grunge, but Red Hot Chili Peppers drop Blood Sugar Sex Magic. Trompe la Mode by the Pixies. The alternative rock scene. There's what is happening as far as hard rock, driving rock, structured rock and roll. It's there at the helm. It's what people are listening to, what they want. Hip hop is starting to just blow up. And there's really no wonder that this record wasn't necessarily critically acclaimed when it came out the way that it is received now today. And I think that it's just because of the time and place when it was released. And it's really kind of no wonder that this band disbanded after this record, especially, if this was going to be the aesthetic choice that they were going to continue with into the 90s. It's unfortunate because they would have struggled through the early 90s, but I think by the time they got to the late 90s, that's when you have this, basically it's like this new little renaissance. And you get bands like Sigur Rós, and you get bands like Radiohead putting out Kid A, and it's, even bands like, I listen to Mark, and I can't help but hear Maynard from Tool. And maybe that's just me being a big old Tool head, but later Tool, albums like Lateralis and 10,000 Days, and even Fear Inoculum, there's this quality in Mark's voice that I can't help but hear him influencing a guy like Maynard. And, and the band like the Deftones, you talk about the soundscape and the atmospherics that develop with post-punk and how they even get fleshed out more with post-rock, right? And the Deftones are a band that, they do a really nice job of balancing metal with with those atmospherics. It's one of my favorite things about their music and why I love that band so much. But Talk Talk, this band and this album, so quietly influential, and especially considering again the time that it was released at, it's unfortunate. I think that given any time and place, if this album had come out 10 years later, it would have been. I feel like all my friends and I in college would have been talking about it. But this is an album that I personally didn't listen to this record until like my late 20s, early 30s, when I started getting into more obscure avant-garde styles of music. I was always into it kind of before, but it was more about talking about earlier, having access to music and, being younger and not having streaming services. It was tough to dive, into the depths of a lot of catalogs of bands. If your friends, if your inner circle didn't listen to stuff, if you didn't have access to physical copies of things, you basically relied on the radio, which we all know kind of sucks. And so this record, it kicks off with Mirror Man, I believe is how you say that. It's a weird spelling, but it's soft textures to open, sparse guitars. You get this, other eerie instrumentation that works in as well. Vocal is fire that builds in. Great minimal jazz piece that works here. Strings and horns are brilliant on this thing to open up. Beautiful coda and the strings that lead that on the way out. Some other bands that I failed to mention while we're getting this thing started. Think of Sonic Youth, and what Sonic Youth was doing while these guys were still making like electronic music. It's kind of interesting to think about. At the Drive-In, more contemporary band, Mars Volta, if you wanted to go even a little newer. Think of just like what's going on there. Less frenzied than the Mars Volta, but that same surreal open quality, like not really focused on structure, but more on creating a soundscape, so to speak. Ascension Day is your second track. This song, big drive on the ride to open, walking bass that comes in behind it, just avant-garde guitar that's really simple and calming at first, but then it opens up with a fury. I really like that transition. The vocal brings in this jazz element back, the guitars, and the total feel of this particular song remind me of At the Drive-In, to mention that band. It's not nearly as frenzied, obviously, but it's got this loose improvised kind of slightly frenzied feel, and then it just cuts off. I really like that. Obviously, the continuity of this record, 6 songs, it feels like one big piece in 6 acts, which is another big thing that I love about it. After the Flood, big old track. This song is exceptional. Simple piano to open, saxophone slowly builds in with the bass, a little bit of organ as well. I love the entrance of the ride. It's like the little percussion that comes in. The organ is just gorgeous when it takes over. And this is a song, it's got a bit of a trip-hop feel, talking about the broad range of influences driving post-punk and then further post-rock. I hear a band like Talk Talk on this record influencing the likes of Portishead, of even someone like Fiona Apple. It's I wouldn't classify Fiona Apple as trip hop, but it's again, I think it's the moodiness, and I think it's again the atmosphere that those two particular artists that I mentioned are able to create with their music. Taphead is your 4th track. Gorgeous bass riff to open. Just feeling Tool on this song a lot. Vocal enters shortly after the guitar entrance. And the guitar entrance, I should say, is just mesmerizing. I really like the way that this song drifts into just a gentle jazz and horn-driven chaos. Evolves into what is a very just noir soundscape. Just it just takes you right there. Really nicely done. Beautiful song. Leads into your penultimate track, New Grass. Just gorgeous song. Talking about that Maynard influence, talking about Tool, this is a track where I heard a little bit of Pussifer. I could not help it. New Grass. Got this soft jazz-driven percussion, island tone in the guitar. It's really pretty. And another great bass build-in. Organ is solid. It's gorgeous, pensive track. And there's this accordion element that works in as well about halfway through that is outrageously good. Really, really enjoy this track a lot. And then Runi is your final song, simple guitar. It's got these faint Eastern influences, this ominous and just moody atmosphere. Fire vocal melodies, really a nice moment of minimalism on this record to close. But it's a fine way to bookend this thing. And this is your album of the week. If you've never checked out Laughingstock from Talk Talk, like I said, it took me a long time in my life to get around to this record, even knowing who this band was. But, it's unfortunate. Time and place, I think, is ultimately what led to this being this band's final album. Mark would go on to make one more solo record, and then he would retire. Unfortunately, we lost him about, I think it's been like about 7 years since we've lost him. But Laughingstock is a landmark record, and reflecting on this album, looking at music, and the last trying to do some math here in my head, but 33 years since this record has come out. It's incredibly influential. The diversity, the range of sounds, whether you're talking about artists again like Sigur Rós that are really exploring and building on the post-rock traditions, or other bands that are making conventional structured rock and roll music. Mark is a guy that's inspired so many and continues to do to this day. So hope you guys all enjoy this record, and I hope you all have a fantastic week. I will see you on Monday, and stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. I got some other stuff that I want to talk about. Got a few days off here now, so I should be able to get at the record store, get a few things, and keep coming at you. But in the meantime, enjoy your week. Enjoy this record. We'll see you next time on the Beat Sessions.